This episode is brought to you by Amazon Business. How can you free up your team from time-consuming office tasks? Amazon Business empowers leaders to not only streamline purchasing, but better support their teams so they can focus on strategy and growth. Free up your teams and focus on your future. Learn more about the technology, insights, and support available at amazonbusiness.com.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
People love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
Welcome. You are entering the Stone Zone. And tonight we're going to be taking your calls and your questions. You can call us at 800-848-9222. That's 800-848-9222. With your questions, or you can go to Ask Stone at stonezone.com. Ask Stone at stonezone.com. Two different ways you can send us your questions or your thoughts, whether it is politics, history, news, fashion, food. I'm open to take your questions. Again, 800-848-9222 is the number, or you can go to Ask Stone at stonezone.com. In breaking news, federal court has now blocked President Donald Trump from imposing tariffs, saying that he exceeded his authority to impose tariffs on our trading partners under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977. Last week, a federal judge, T. Ken Wetherill, ruled that President Trump did have the authority to impose tariffs under this law, a ruling from the 1970s, but did not at that time issue an order. According to the judge, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1970 did give Trump the authority to set tariffs for reasons other than raising revenue. Judge Wetherill wrote that Trump's his justification for the tariffs, both stemming from the flow of illicit drugs into our country and resolving a trade imbalance, was sufficient to satisfy the terms set by Congress back in the 1970s. Now, however, rather than issuing a warning, that judge punted the case to a federal court in South Florida, which in turn punted it to a Court of International Trade that is based in New York. The International Court of Trade, three-judge panel, has now ruled that President Trump has exceeded his authority to unilaterally impose tariffs under the 1970s law. The three-judge panel at the U.S. Court of International Trade, a relatively low-profile court in Manhattan, ruled today that there would be a temporary halt to Trump's global tariffs that he imposed, citing the emergency economic powers in his Liberation Day announcement back on April 2nd. Clearly, folks, they are trying to tie the hands of the president. They're exceeding their authority, trying to take the president's executive authority to impose his agenda, the agenda that the American people voted overwhelmingly for in the last election. This, of course, will end up, as all these questions do, before the U.S. Supreme Court. Also interesting today, Senator Chuck Grassley released a newly declassified document proving that Fusion GPS contractor and wife of an FBI figure lied to Congress about her involvement in Russiagate. You remember that? That's the largest single abuse of power in American history, an abuse of power in which the full authority of the United States government and the incredible capabilities of our intelligence agencies were utilizing two pieces of so-called evidence that they knew were fabricated. The Steele dossier, that was paid for by Hillary Clinton, that claimed falsely that President Donald Trump, as a private citizen, had dallied with prostitutes in Moscow when they were on a business trip, and the false claim that the Russians hacked the Democrat National Committee, and that information, the fruits of that hack, ended up with WikiLeaks. The federal government, including our intelligence agencies, have never provided any evidence that would prove either one of those. So they tried to remove a duly elected president based on a political agenda. It was a coup. It was a much, much bigger scandal than Watergate. But whether anyone is going to be held responsible is yet to be seen. One of the problems that I have talked about is the fact that any indictment brought in the District of Columbia, whether it would be, for example, former CIA Director John Brennan, clearly the chief orchestrator of the Russian collusion plot, or FBI Director James Comey, who tried to entrap the president, or the former Attorney General, acting Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who admits that he was wearing a wire in a meeting with the president in an effort to remove him under the 25th Amendment. Remains to be seen whether any of these people will be held responsible. See, if you go to trial in the District of Columbia, you're certain to get a deeply biased and politicized judge. I certainly had one in my case. You're also going to get a completely biased jury made up entirely of Trump-hating Democrats. If you look at the case that John Durham, the special counsel, brought against Michael Sussman, he was one of the lawyers at the very bottom of the totem pole in the Russian collusion hoax. Indicting him, by the way, is kind of like indicting the guy who drove the getaway car for double parking while you let the bank robbers escape. But even in his case, the prosecutor could not secure a conviction. Whether anyone will be held responsible remains to be seen. Anyway, we are taking your calls tonight at 800-848-9222, 800-848-9222. Also, you can email us your questions. They go to askstone@stonezone.com. You are in the Stone Zone, and we're taking your questions. Let's move to our first question. Laura from Cleveland, Ohio says, I heard that you had a sheriff on your show yesterday who was convicted of corruption. Why do you think President Trump was right to pardon him? You're absolutely right. We had the sheriff on Scott Jenkins on our show last night. The president pardoned him late Memorial Day. He was actually supposed to report to a federal prison in Virginia, where he would have been in the general population along with murderers and drug dealers. I think his life would have been in danger. But if you look at this case, it becomes absolutely clear that he is yet another victim of lawfare. What was the judge's crime? They said that he sold auxiliary deputy badges and the money went to his campaign. That is, by the way, perfectly legal in Virginia. It's legal in most states. It's legal in Florida. These auxiliary deputies had no authority. They required no training, and the money didn't go to the sheriff's pocket. The money went to his campaign fund. But I think what really made the sheriff a target was his standing up for the principle of deporting illegals in this country who are a danger to the American people, his standing up against Governor Northam of Virginia, who wanted to impose draconian gun control laws. But what really, I think, put the target on his back was after they decided to target him, the FBI put a wiretap on him in which he was heard talking to several other sheriffs about Hunter Biden's laptop and the need to investigate. In any event, I think the sheriff was not allowed to defend himself. The judge in his case, a radical leftist judge, refused to allow him to mount any defense at all, or for example, have any other sheriff from the state of Virginia testify that having these auxiliary sheriff's badges and giving them to donors to your campaign is not illegal, not even a little bit. So, yes, I think the president, in an act of justice and mercy, absolutely did the right thing. And we had the sheriff on the show in the Stone Zone only yesterday. Here's a question from Terry from Fairfield, Connecticut. She asks, how do you think Robert F. Kennedy is doing in his efforts to make America healthy again? I think that he is doing amazingly well. The Big Pharma is the biggest and most powerful lobby in Washington. But now I note that the CDC is no longer requiring newborn infants or pregnant mothers to get the COVID-19 vaccination. To me, that is tremendous progress. But I also admire RFK for his efforts to make America's diets healthy again. He has taken on the entire issue of chronic childhood disease, and he has correctly tied it to the processed foods that we are being fed. So he has moved very aggressively to remove red dye number 40, yellow dye number 5, yellow dye number 1, blue dye number 1, green dye number 3, green dye number 3 from our food. They're all to be phased out. By the way, all those additives are already illegal in every European country. He's also moving to take out other toxic chemicals like potassium vegetable oil, potassium bromate, and many, many others. So I think RFK is doing an amazing, amazing job. It is our great opportunity tonight to take your questions. Again, that number, 800-848-9222, 800-848-9222. And you can also email your questions to askstone@stonezone.com. askstone@stonezone.com. In the meantime, we have this breaking news regarding the tariffs. This is part and parcel of the same strategy by partisan Democrat judges to thwart the authority of the president. You recall that the courts earlier, the lower courts ruled that the president did not have the authority to deport dangerous, illegal immigrants who were gang members. Ultimately, the Supreme Court stepped in and restored the president's authority. This is one of the key elements of the president's agenda. I would note that illegal border crossings in our southern border have dropped by 93% since President Trump simply began enforcing existing law. You may remember that Joe Biden kept saying that there's nothing he could do unless Congress enacted a new law. That was false, but then we don't know who was writing that for Joe Biden. I think we're pretty sure that he wasn't really running the country. And we have the question of the auto pen that was used to sign a number of these pardons, as well as a number of his appointments and other policies. When we come back, we're going to be taking your questions. 100, again, that number, 800-848-9222. Don't go away. We'll be right back in the Stone Zone and take more of your questions online and by phone. Do whatever you do.
This
don't
is
touch
the
that
Stone
dial.
Zone with Roger Stone. The Stone Zone.
This National Foster Care Month, Marine Toys for Tots is providing hope to children who need it most. Staff Sergeant James Caldwell, who grew up in foster care himself, shares that while handing out gifts at a Toys for Tots distribution event, a little girl looked up at him, reached into her bag, pulled out a stuffed animal and said, "Someone needs to make sure you get a toy too." That simple gesture embodies the heart of Marine Toys for Tots, ensuring every child, including those in foster care, experiences the kindness that can transform their future. Visit toysfortots.org today.
Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner? You may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
I love ravioli.
Oh, tanta fame.
Since when do you speak Italian?
Since we partnered with SAP Concur, their integrated travel and expense platform and breakthrough solutions with AI gave me time back to dive into our financial future. We expand into Europe in 2027, so I'm getting ready.
Well, you can predict the future?
I can predict you'll like that message.
What message? Whoa, hey, we all got bonuses.
You can save for college now.
I don't have kids.
You don't say.
SAP Concur helps your business move forward faster. Learn more at concur.com.
Faraday presenta Ojos con Alergia y Picazón contra el Jardinero. Y el ganador es Faraday Extra Fuerte. Para aliviar la picazón de los ojos por alergia, actúa más rápido y supera a Claritin y Flonase aún a las 24 horas. Faraday, adelante.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
Now, get him his own. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back to the Stone Zone. I'm Roger Stone, a veteran of 13 national presidential campaigns. I spent 40 years in the corroded rectum of the two-party system. I've seen and heard it all, and tonight I'm taking your questions at 800-848-9222. That's 800-848-9222, or ask Stone at stonezone.com. Two ways to send us questions. Let's go to the call board now. Scott in Lexington, Kentucky, you have a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Stone, for taking my call. I would like your opinion on who is going to take the leadership of these demon cats. Are you telling me AOC? Come on, man.
Well, it's an excellent question. Let me address it. The problem, of course, is that the old Democrat Party, the party of John F. Kennedy and Harry Truman, party that believed in capitalism and free enterprise, strong national defense, believed in God, that party literally no longer exists. The words moderate Democrat, sadly today, is an oxymoron, and their party has become captive by a radical Marxist clique in which people like AOC and Jasmine Crockett rise to the top. People believe that Joe Biden, who through most of his career was considered a moderate Democrat, would govern as a moderate Democrat. Little did we know that, well, it doesn't appear like he was governing at all. It appears that his wife and those who were controlling the auto pen were governing America, and he opened our borders to 20 million, I think, illegals, not to mention an enormous trafficking of drugs and weapons into this country. It's very dangerous. So their process, if they have a Democrat process, because remember, Kamala Harris was selected as their nominee without winning a single primary or caucus. The National Committee just met and they designated her as the candidate. They dumped Joe Biden, I think, against his will. Will they even have a democratic process, small d? They whine constantly about democracy, but there's no democracy in the nomination of Kamala Harris. By the way, if you took a poll today, you would find that Kamala Harris is the number one choice of Democrats to be their nominee for 2028 when you include her on the ballot. And then after that, it drops to AOC. I don't think their party is able to nominate a centrist or a moderate, and I don't think you're going to beat any Republican in 2028 with a radical left, open borders candidate. So the old Democrat Party, sadly, a thing of the past. Great question, Scott. Thank you for calling. Bob in Orange County, I assume that's Orange County, California. Could be Orange County, New York. You have a question.
Yes, first of all, I want to share President Trump's admiration for you, Mr. Stone. And secondarily, it's Orange County, New York.
Excellent.
So my concern is that as a gentleman who is probably similar in age to you, I am concerned that America is now in a September 10th, 2001 mindset. We see radical Islamists throughout the world. We see Islamists in our Congress. And I'm concerned that America has become complacent and that we have forgotten what had happened on September 11th, 2001.
I'm afraid that you're right. I think it's also abundantly clear that radical Islamists have infiltrated every segment of our country. We will be back to take more of your questions. I'm going to finish answering your question, Bob. When we come back, we'll be back in the Stone Zone. So whatever you do, don't touch that dial. Whatever you do,
this
don't
is
touch
the
that
Stone
dial.
Zone with Roger Stone. The Stone Zone.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Healthcare professionals can lead their careers with LinkedIn. Discover jobs by specialty, preferred shifts, and even desired salary. From mental health therapists to radiology technicians, it's now faster and easier for healthcare professionals to find the right fit. Learn more at linkedin.com/healthcare. Side effects may include faster job placement, improved work-life balance, and increased career satisfaction.
Clorox Scentiva smells like lavender. Cleans like Clorox. And feels like...
All right, that could go on for a while. Experience the long-lasting freshness of Clorox Scentiva. Available in Clorox Scentiva Lavender Scented Bleach. Use as directed.
Choice Hotels gets you more for your money so you can maximize any road trip. Like these road trippers making waffles and eating fresh fruit in their natural habitat. The breakfast area at a Comfort Inn. I just love seeing a vacation maximized in the wild. Check into more. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
This is the Stone Zone. Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back in the Stone Zone. We're taking your questions and calls tonight. That number, 800-848-9222. 800-848-9222. Or alternatively, go to Ask Stone at stonezone.com on the net, and we'll take your calls that way. I do want to express a little sadness over my good friend Rick Derringer, rock legend, extraordinary singer, songwriter, guitarist, entertainer, a mega talent. He first came to national prominence with the McCoys, the hit song Hang On Sloopy. Later wrote the rock anthem Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo. He passed away yesterday at age 77. A good friend of mine who was on this show several times. Our prayers go to his family and his lovely wife. Anyway, we are taking your calls. Vincent from Queens from the internet says, I saw where Dan Bongino and Kash Patel from the FBI say they now believe that the convicted sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. I also saw that you disagree with that statement. So what's the story? Look, I have a very high regard for Kash Patel, and I sleep better at night knowing that the FBI is now redirected towards thwarting terrorist plots in the United States. He's announced that several plots to bomb buildings and so on have been averted. But on this one, I think that he's wrong. The New York Medical Examiner, Michael Baden, one of the most respected pathologists in the country, examined Jeffrey Epstein's body and said that the markings on his body were not consistent with his having hung himself. Now, you add that to the fact that the video surveillance cameras were just conveniently not operating, and that the two people charged with monitoring Epstein in his cell, they fell asleep, and that Epstein was taken off of suicide watch. If he was suicidal, why'd they take him off suicide watch? And his cellmate was removed from the cell. So it is, I think, add that to the fact that he hired a new criminal defense attorney, David Schoen, paid Schoen a retainer, was arranging for Schoen to move to New York to go to trial, and that they had an extensive discussion of trial strategy. In America, everybody, even the most heinous criminals, are entitled to a lawyer and a legal defense. I am sorry, but I think that the evidence is kind of overwhelming that Epstein did not kill himself. Add to that, by the way, the fact that Virginia Giuffre, probably the best known of Epstein's victims, she turned down a multi-million-dollar settlement from Epstein. Instead, she insisted on going to trial. I read every word of her sworn testimony. I interviewed her for my book, The Clintons' War on Women. Chapter 7 of that book, the longest chapter in the book, is a total expose of Jeffrey Epstein and his relationship with Bill and Hillary Clinton. We're told that only weeks ago that she killed herself. And that was after leaving a message that said, I am not suicidal. If anybody tells you that I harmed myself or killed myself, be deeply suspicious. So I think those are related events, and that is why I reached that opinion. Mary Ann and Bart, you have a question. Mary Ann and Bart.
Yeah, we're big fans of your show.
Thank you.
We have a question. Do you know if President Trump has any plans to do something to protect the power grids in this country? Because we had followed a scientist who's now dead, Dr. Peter Pry, I think it was his name. Unfortunately, he's passed away. But he said during Trump's, a couple of years ago, he talked about Trump in his first administration, and he said he got an A+ for, listening to them and trying to do something, because apparently China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea have the ability to disable our power grids. So do you know if there's any plans to put something in place to protect the power grids?
Actually, we had a guest on the show, Glenn Rhodes, several months ago, who's also an expert in this area. He points out that the power grids across the country are incredibly vulnerable. Many of them are not guarded at all, and some of them are merely guarded by a chain-link fence, not even security cameras, no barbed wire. I think it is, you're right, the president did act very aggressively in his first term. Joe Biden canceled most of that. You have pointed out a high priority. I don't know specific plans, but it's an excellent question, and next time I talk to the president, I'll ask him for you. How's that? Thanks. Thanks.
We were hoping maybe you could, mention it to him or something. So.
Well, all right. Mary Ann, thank you very much for calling in to the Stone Zone and for your great question. Here's a question from Anna in Orlando, Florida. Anna says, I tried to fly to visit my grandparents over the Memorial Day weekend, but when I got to the airport, I was told that I needed something called Real ID, a new federally required photo ID. I had to wait in line for an hour, and I missed my flight because, they finally, she says, let me fly using my driver's license as an ID. What's going on here? Real ID was passed into federal law after 9/11, and they have not been able to implement it because a number of states object. In order to get a Real ID, you have to submit certain documents to the government, birth certificate, I think a social security card, driver's license, and so on. Now, they tell us that this is a good idea because it would mean that people who are not entitled to Social Security wouldn't be getting checks, or that people who are not legally eligible to vote would not be able to vote. Although I don't know of a single state that requires Real ID to vote, at least not yet. My fear, of course, is that the government will begin collecting biometric information on every American, and they will ultimately use it perhaps to spy on us, but ultimately to assign us social credit scores like they have in China. For those who say, that's a conspiracy theory, look only at the Patriot Act, which was put in place supposedly to protect us from Islamic terrorists, but ended up being used to justify the spying by the FISA court and the FBI on President Donald Trump's campaign. Perfect example of how these well-meaning government programs end up being weaponized against the American people. So I think Real ID is a bad idea. I've seen all the TV ads of the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem talking to us about how great they are. I myself am skeptical. I think the project is a bad idea. Sam from Oklahoma, you have a question.
Hi, Roger. following your story for quite a while, but what I want to ask you about is what do you think of the South African refugee program, and it should be speeded up?
Last time I saw, we had only actually received 56 ranchers, farmers, Boers from South Africa. I think the president is right. Their lives are in danger there. The government will not protect their lives. In fact, the governing party has rallies screaming for their blood. And therefore, I think the president is right, and that we should allow people from South Africa to receive asylum in this country. And I agree with you. It should be speeded up. Thank you so much for your question. Here is another one online. Jim from Seattle says David Hogg, he's the vice chairman of the Democrat National Committee, was caught on camera by Project Veritas admitting that Joe Biden's chief of staff, Anthony Burnell, was the one running the Biden White House. How many Democrats were complicit in the cover-up of Joe Biden's mental decline? I think the answer is all of them. They all knew. Every reporter in Washington knew. Every Democrat member of Congress who met with the president knew. Do you remember the event in which Joe Biden watched a video tribute to a congresswoman who had just passed away, and then as soon as he got up to speak, he asked the woman to stand up and take a bow? Joe Biden, who kept reading the stage directions off the teleprompter, couldn't figure out which way to exit the stage, couldn't finish a full sentence or a full thought, would just kind of trail off, which neurologists tell me is a sure sign of the onset of senile dementia. Now you add to that, he's constantly falling down. No, I think the president was non compos mentis. I think that those around him knew it. Now, back when Woodrow Wilson was president, he had a stroke in his the last 3 years of his term, and his wife, Edith Galt Wilson, was the de facto president of the United States. She would put the pen in his hand and move it across the paper when he had to sign specific legal documents. But because we had no television, no mass media in those days, and no one saw the president for 3 years, because he was mentally and physically completely incapacitated, and no one knew. Here, everyone knew. It was an open secret. You saw that debate with President Donald Trump, where he literally melted down on national television, but immediately afterwards, Kamala Harris told us he was, and I quote, sharp as a tack. His enablers continue to insist that, no, in private meetings, he's intense and he's focused and he's a good old Joe. He's doing, no, all of that was BS. And they all knew it was. It was the greatest cover-up in American political history. And it is particularly a scandal now because we have to ask about all of these pardons. They want to talk about Trump's pardons? Let's talk about Biden's pardons. Not just pardons for his political cronies like Adam Schiff and Liz Cheney and others, but also the pardons he gave to hardened criminals, murderers, drug dealers, sex traffickers, people who didn't even apply for pardons, people who'd expressed no remorse for their crimes. Who authorized those pardons? I think they were all signed by an auto pen. Frankly, I doubt that Joe Biden, perhaps even Jill Biden, I don't think they knew. So it is a gigantic scandal. Jennifer in Ohio, you have a question.
I have two quick questions, if you don't mind. I find United States military to be one of the precious things that we have to offer. They are willing to lay down their lives for us. How do you feel about the United States military?
I completely agree. My father served. My grandfather served. All of my uncles served. I'm grateful that they all came back. But just 2 days ago, we honored those who didn't make it back, those who gave the supreme sacrifice. Watching President Trump's remarks at West Point, I think demonstrated that he, too, values our military. This vile claim by John Kelly, the chief of staff, that he fired General John Kelly, who said that the president said that those who laid down their lives for the country were suckers and losers, There were 19 other people present when he allegedly said that, and not a single one of them recalls the president saying anything of the kind. General Kelly also said that Trump told him directly that he admired Adolf Hitler. Well, how come General Kelly only remembered that in the 30 days before the election? That's because Donald Trump never said anything of the kind. He reveres our military. He loves our military. He loves our men and women in law enforcement. And it is great to have a president, again, who reveres the military and respects the fact that they put their lives on the line for us around the globe. It was heartening to see him at West Point. Jennifer, thank you very much for your question, and thanks for dialing in to the Stone Zone here on the Red Apple Audio Networks. We're taking your questions at 800-848-9222, 800-848-9222, or you can, of course, go to Ask Stone at stonezone.com. If you have a question, if you're waiting online, continue to wait. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can. Whenever you don't touch that dial, we'll be right back in the Stone Zone in just a moment, taking more of your questions, whether it is news, politics, fashion, food, whatever's on your mind. We will take your questions. We'll be right back.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone. The Stone Zone. This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
And we're back in the Stone Zone. We're taking your calls and your questions. Let's go to John in Brooklyn. John, you have a question.
Hi, Roger. I heard you say that LBJ was behind the JFK assassination. I was wondering, did Lady Bird, was she in on it, do you think, in on the plot, or was she kept in the dark?
Well, she has a broad grin on her face when Lyndon is getting sworn in. I wrote a book, New York Times bestseller, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ, in which I made a case that Lyndon Johnson was at the helm of a plot that included the CIA, organized crime, Big Texas Oil, and certain financial interests to kill John Kennedy. His motive? He was under investigation in the Bobby Baker and the Billy Saul Estes scandals, corruption scandals. He was on the verge of being indicted and removed from the 1964 ticket. I believe that the shooter, at least one of the shooters, I believe there were as many as four, but at least one of the shooters from the sixth floor of the Texas School Book Depository Building was a man named Malcolm Mac Wallace. I say that because Wallace left his fingerprints on the cardboard boxes and the window sill on the sixth floor. Nathan Darby, one of the foremost fingerprint experts in the country, worked for the Austin police actually, said that the prints belonged to Wallace. Wallace was in a patronage job at the Agriculture Department. He had been convicted of first-degree murder in 1951 when he killed a man, John Douglas Kinzer, who was trying to blackmail, LBJ. It was Johnson. Let me say this also, that Wallace was identified by at least 6 eyewitnesses who saw a man who met Wallace's physical description in the window of the sixth floor. Wallace was a decorated Marine sharpshooter, and a man named Loy Factor, who had been recruited as a backup shooter, revealed his presence on the sixth floor with Wallace and accurately described the room on the sixth floor from which at least one of the fatal shots was shot. So motive means opportunity. It was LBJ who insisted that Kennedy go to Texas. It was Governor John Connally, who had formerly been the chief of staff for Senate Majority Leader Lyndon Johnson, later vice president, who insisted that the motorcade, which was going to 2 locations outside the city of Dallas, from the Dallas-Fort Worth airport to the merchandise mart, it was John Connolly who insisted that the motorcade go through Dealey Plaza, which is inside the city limits. Also a motorcade route that required the car to come to a full stop at a stop sign. Total violation of the Secret Service manual rules. So motive, means, and of course, opportunity. I stand by my belief that Lyndon Johnson was at the helm of a plot. I do think the CIA had their own motives. They were angry at JFK over the failure of the Bay of Pigs invasion. Also, they knew in real time in the Cuban Missile Crisis that even though we were told that the Russians had removed the missiles from Cuba, that actually a secret deal was made between the Kennedys and Nikita Khrushchev in which we removed our missiles from Turkey and Italy, changing the balance of power in Europe. That was a classified secret for 40 years, but we know it today. So the CIA's motives are clear. And then there was organized crime. I think they were complicit as well. The House Select Committee on Assassinations in the late 70s did a full investigation. They ruled that organized crime was involved in Kennedy's murder. So there you have it. As they say, who benefits? Cui bono. In Latin, I think LBJ was the big enchilada when it comes to the murder of JFK. Thank you for joining us tonight in the Stone Zone. Thank you for your calls and your emailed questions, and join us in the zone tomorrow. Until then, God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
Hello, folks. Larry Kudlow here. Pay attention, because China is leading the largest anti-American alliance since World War II. One that's already dumped U.S. bonds, grabbed 43 million acres of our farmland, and is plotting to dethrone the dollar. That's why IRA and 401k savers are protecting their savings with gold. Please go to freegoldguide.com/Kudlow or just call 800-621-3908 for your free gold guide on how to protect your wealth with gold 100% tax-free.